There are several key components enabling the digital transformation that businesses go through today. One of them is identity, or identity and access management. Covisint has been one of the first companies to create a purpose-built cloud platform for identity and the Internet of Things. At Covisint, we've seen firsthand how technology increasingly impacts business models across industries. It also changes how enterprises manage their relationship with customers, partners, employees, and now things. I am Vincent Toresca, Vice President of Product Management at Covisint, and I am joined today by Forrester's lead analyst covering identity, Andras Cser. Andras, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us about identity today.
Thanks for having me, Vincent. Yeah, it's good. Good to be here.
So my first question to you, Andras, is like a lot of people, I found in the past that people would confuse identity with security. How will you define identity and the role it plays in business transformation? How do you explain that people confuse identity and security?
Sure. So basically, security and identity management are almost always intertwined, right? Identity and access management, so understanding not only who has access to what and who should be having access to what, but also enforcing that access is also very important, and that's where security comes in. So, identity and access management is about four things primarily. One, keeping the bad guys out, which is basically the security stuff, so how do you make sure that bad guys don't come in, right? Reducing the cost of compliance, so making sure that you can answer your auditor's concerns, right? If they ask you why is Vincent or Andras logging in, right? How do you answer that? So that's number two. IT operational efficiency, so how you actually not hire a ton of people to maintain your call center, reset identities, onboard people, offboard identities. So that's number three. And number four is business agility, which is extremely important, right? This is how you become a better company, making more widgets, selling more cars, becoming a better healthcare organization by using good and appropriate identity and access management mechanisms. So clearly security is part of identity management. Mostly it's IT security organizations or IT operations organizations that own security, but the reason for IT ops getting involved is because there is a lot of aspects of identity and access management that go way beyond security. So things like a lot of how it ties into business processes, how you manage authorizations in an application, the who can access what, or what a user can or cannot do on a website, is absolutely part of profile management, which is basically not necessarily always security, right? But it's more of a business process rather than just a security, kind of how we keep the bad guys out kind of question.
So what would you say are the key capabilities that are required to support these strategies? And how is the concept of platform resonating with developers for identity as well?
Sure. So key capabilities are you have to actually look across not only your online web presence, but you have to look at your mobile web presence, your mobile applications. You have to look at your telephone-based, call center-based presence. You have to look at in-person, branch, point of sale kind of operations, and you have to get a total tally and inventory of all these channels you operate on. So that's number one. Number two is you got to look at the following key use cases. So typically you got some identity verification or vetting or proofing of identities, making sure that Andras is the guy who you have a business relationship with, will get the password and will be able to register your site. So, and it's not somebody else, not Mickey Mouse creating an account on behalf of Andras, right? So that's, you gotta do that. So the second thing is enrollment, which is when you actually create a security profile with a username, password, or maybe biometric authentication, and you attach that profile to the known human being, to the contractual relationship. And we're seeing a lot of actually people creating that business relationship at the same time when you create a security profile. It's not necessarily always the case. Then you have to log in the user, right? So it's basically, there's an important element. How do you log people in? What kind of password policies you use? What kind of usernames you use? Do you use passwords at all? Because passwords are becoming weaker and weaker as computing power is getting stronger and stronger. So hence the need for biometrics, fingerprint, facial print, voice print biometrics. So login is the next phase. And then you got the log out, when you time people out, right? In the meantime, so when the user is logged in, then you have to have a good mechanism for allowing the user to make changes to their profile. So update things like their email address, update things like their notification, text message, phone number, update things like their mailing address, physical mailing address, and things like that. And you have to treat these activities as basically important and just with the same kind of level of precautions as you would look at your passwords, right? So if someone knows your physical address, they can always request a mail, right, that goes out to your mailing address, and it can be used to reset your password. Or if somebody can set up your password, right, reset the password based on the answers to your security questions, then you have to make sure that the security questions that you store about a user are also encrypted, and when you don't offer like really easy modification of those questions to your customer. So that's really the profile update, and all this has to be really standard across multiple channels. Like I said, online web, mobile application, call center, in person, point of sale, and so on type of channels.
How do these identity platform capabilities address specific business problems, and what would you say are the primary use cases for B2B and consumer or customer identity management?
Sure. So B2B is typically when you want to have a number of suppliers or agents or any kind of subsidiary organizations that work for you as the main company be able to provide access to their employees to your application. So say if you are a large automotive manufacturer and you have 10,000 suppliers, how do those suppliers get access to your website to look at things like invoices, pay those? How do you look at intellectual property, diagrams, all that sort. That's the B2B kind of use case. The consumer use case is clearly all about how do you make sure that you are able to acquire and retain consumers, make sure that you're selling your processes online, that the customers are satisfied with your processes. You don't see any kind of social media fiascos happening. This is all part of that story.
So today, identity seems to be viewed and sold as a product more so than as a strategy. How long do you think it will take the market to make that shift from seeing identity as a product to treating identity as a strategy?
So identity as a strategy is very important. Like if you are just treating identity as a point solution, you're always going to end up with disparate and really fragmented systems. And anytime you bring in an application, the real due diligence would be to be able to make sure that identity and that business application actually meets and fits into your existing identity and access management framework. We're seeing more and more organizations kind of looking at this from the strategic perspective, and not like, we acquired this identity and access management platform, and how can we build this out? But how does this identity and access management platform that offers things like API-based interfaces for application integration or non-human access integration, right? So requesting applications access or resetting passwords as an API so that it can be called from applications or devices or whatever it is. So that transformation takes time from the pure perspective of humans working with systems to the non-carbon life forms kind of interacting with systems. So it'll probably take, in my view, 18 to 24 months at a minimum. But we've seen more and more change in this area for sure.
How can identity drive customer engagement and customer intimacy?
Sure. So when you look at identity, right, from the very beginning at the enrollment process, if you are actually able to sign up for a service online instead of having to go to a branch and show your identity papers and all that, that is a huge thing. Like, in the snowstorm that we had this morning, right? It's, you definitely don't want to necessarily, go to a branch or don't want to undertake travel, so that anytime you got big distances, that's one thing. So online enrollment is very important. Not bugging users with a lot of requirements around authentication, passwords, so making passwords easier, making them easier to log in, use biometric, fingerprint, facial recognition, voice print biometrics kind of things, instead of having to remember 15-character long passwords. That's a big thing. So customers love that. And actually, after we've seen the Touch ID on Apple iPhones becoming more ubiquitous for unlocking the screen lock, We're seeing more and more customers asking banks and insurance companies and really every verticals to embed the fingerprint reader into the authentication process. So that's a very important element. So that the authentication definitely plays a role. And then when you log on, when you are a customer, consumer in a website, the whole profile management, the site being able to remember how you set it up, where the little windows are, like how you set up the look and feel of the device. If you have a list of items that you want to look at, that you want to search or filter or sort in a certain way, that is very important. And identity access management can help there. Remembering terms and conditions of a contract is also very important. So it's really nice if the site does not bug a user all over and over again to kind of sign certain levels of paperwork. And really, a good website also has some connections or really capabilities that touch e-signatures. So you're able to do basically paperless business as a consumer with your provider. And again, making sure that it reaches and extends to all the channels, and you have a uniform way of representing identity, consumer-friendly or the digital experience-friendly identity across all channels is also a very important thing.
One last thing, the Internet of Things is
Sure.
increasingly becoming a reality. How important is it to have a core identity strategy that is established across people, systems, and things?
Sure. I mean, it's even more important than what we had before, right? So, you can think of these IoT devices being really vaults of personal information, right? So data protection is very important. If you leave your home, go travel, like your electric company will see that you've been out for a month. That month you've been maybe consuming 75% less electricity than you usually do. So, how do you make sure your home is not burglarized during that time? So, just the pure data protection is a very important thing. Interconnected devices are very important. A lot of times in those situations, the device acts as the point that offers the application, and maybe another device or a human being acts as the entity that you need to authenticate to that device, right? So that you got these problems. And you have the whole problem set around having many more different types of organizations, right? So you got device manufacturers, you have consumers, you have enterprises trying to use many interconnected or IoT devices. So that's an interesting thing. And then, basically, they have to be all orchestrated and made sure that they work in harmony with one another. And identity is a key component of this. So identity and access management of IoT devices and for IoT devices is actually a very important requirement. And that actually points towards these IoT devices being used not as just attack endpoints, right? To kind of attack a nuclear facility as like you got 150 billion different sensors targeting one target, but also as a conduit to enable better human interaction and more customized, more customer-friendly interaction with these IoT devices. That includes good authentication, that is frictionless, good enrollment, good basically change of ownership of a device like a car or a refrigerator or whatever a device that is. So these are the elements that we see becoming important in the IoT world. So it's again, how do you provide a customer experience while you're keeping secure?
These are great insights. Thank you very much, Andras, for your time
Absolutely.
today discussing identity
Absolutely.
for people and for things.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.